Good morning, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing, both this panel and the second one, and thank you to the chairman for convening this hearing. As I look at my short time left remaining in Congress, and having traveled for 2 weeks in Oklahoma in August, I am brought constantly and frequently back to the position of our founders, and not only their vision, but their wisdom. Protect and serve. Our founders saw no role for the federal government in state and local police forces, none. And yet what we have seen is, on the basis of what we saw on 9/11, what seems to be an overreaction and a progress toward the federal government in law enforcement is doing the same thing it's done in every other area when it comes to the General Welfare Clause and the Commerce Clause. And we're on dangerous ground of undermining the very principles that built the country. It's hard to see a difference between the militarized and increasingly federalized police force we see in towns across America today and the force that Madison had in mind when he said a standing military force with an overgrown executive will not long be a safe companion to liberty. I have some real heartburn with not just the 1033 program, with the USAID grants, with some of the Justice Department grants, and with a lot of the Homeland Security grants in terms of how they've been utilized, what they've been utilized for. And so I look forward to hearing from our witnesses. I have some significant questions. The 1033 program has been around a long time. It was not just in response to this. But I think we need to have a good airing. We need to re-center where we are. There is no role for the federal government in the local and state police forces in our country. And I hope we can winnow that out today to see where we've stepped across the line and actually have created some problems that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Eston, when was the last time that you can recall that the equipment from a 1033 transfer program was used in counterterrorism?
Senator, I can't, we don't have a capability of monitoring how the equipment that we've provided is
I understand
used.
that, but do you have any recollection other than Boston and Sarnev and he's in the boat and maybe some equipment was used there?
Senator.
Does anybody know when the last time in terms of true counterterrorism that equipment was used?
I'm sure we could pulse the system for anecdotes on that, but I really would have to do that, sir.
All right. I'm not going to go through the audit and the lack of response or timely response by your organization to the audit, but how do you all determine what federal supply classes are available to be transferred?
That is done basically by our item managers who manage.
I know, but tell me, how do they decide an MRAP's appropriate for a community of my hometown, 35,000 people?
That is done by the state coordinator.
I understand that, but how did you ever decide that an MRAP is an appropriate vehicle for local police forces?
We, an MRAP is a truck, Senator, with
No, it's not a truck. It's a 48,000
It is a
pound
very, very, very
offensive weapon.
It is not an offensive weapon, Senator.
It can be used as an offensive weapon.
When we give an MRAP, it is stripped of all its electronic warfare capability. It does not have a 50 caliber weapon on it. It is not an offensive weapon. It is a protective vehicle.
Okay. I'll just make a point. You all give out 30 caliber weapons. It's on your list. 30 caliber is 3-centimeter weapon. That's this big. That's the size of the shell. So all I'm asking is, I just want to know how you come about to say that Muskogee, Oklahoma, And I know who makes the decision on whether we equip, but you make it available, and then a state through the LESO and the state coordinator determines that they get one of those. There's 6 of them in Oklahoma, all right? How do we ever get to the point where we think states need MRAPs? How'd that process come about?
You know, this is one of the areas that we're obviously going to look at, Senator, on how we decided what equipment is available. I mean, obviously, we've made some big decisions, you know, fighter aircraft, tanks, strikers, those type of things are not available. Sniper rifles, not available. Grenade launchers, not available.
Drones are available.
No.
Airplanes are available.
Airplanes are available.
Helicopters are
Cargo helicopters. Helicopters, not Apaches.
Okay, but really, you can't tell us today how we make those decisions of what goes on the list and off the list.
It's basically a common sense decision inside the department, and then, you know, we do, as I keep saying, go back to the states.
When something is removed from the list, and I don't know if you have any recent experience with this, are agencies required to return the restricted equipment?
That's why we retain title for what we call controlled equipment, so that we can pull that equipment.
So is a 30 caliber gun
A 7.62 weapon is available on the 7.62 millimeters available.
I'm talking 30, okay.
But it's no crew-served weapons, nothing that requires a belt,
Yeah.
you know, for firing.
Okay, all right. Are you aware of any that have been previously authorized that are now restricted?
The type of stuff that we've ended up further restricting for body armor.
Okay.
And we used to provide body armor, we no longer do that. And part of that's for safety reasons, is that once body armor becomes excess, we can't guarantee its safety. Major equipment, I'm not aware of any, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kamoy, according to FEMA's authorized equipment list, battle dress uniforms are an authorized purchase under preparedness grant programs, right?
I believe that's correct, Senator.
Why?
The authorized equipment list is reviewed biannually, and we consult with state and local responders and the stakeholders and the grantees who advise us on what it is they need to build the capabilities to support the national preparedness goals. So
That gets right down to the point.
So responders have told us that this.
So we need to have in the states, funded by the federal government, a militarized police force. I mean, that's a component of it.
Well, I think a lot more.
And that fits in with our goals?
We certainly can review the types of uniforms that our responders are requesting, but they have advised us in the building of capabilities to fight terrorism that this type of dress would be useful.
Okay, let me ask you the same question I asked Mr. Estevez. When was the last time that you were aware, in terms of the grant money that's being given out, either the UASA grants or the Homeland Security grants? And by the way, the Homeland Security grants aren't based on risk. The UASA grants are. The others are based on a mandated that came through this committee that said X state will get X%, rather than doing it on risk like we should have. When was the last time we have seen what you have given been used, other than the response to the Sarnev brothers, been used against counterterrorism?
That was the last time. The Sarnev
when was another time?
I'm quite sure that New York used its domain awareness system in the Times Square bombing attempt. That is a funded asset with these grant funds.
Okay.
So within the last couple
So
years.
we've with the Homeland Security grants, with the 1033 program, with the Department of Justice grants over the last 5 years, we've put out $41 billion worth of money, and we know of really 2 times. And the point I'm getting to is that we'll never have enough money to be totally prepared for everything. And so the question is common sense, much like the chairman said, and judgment. I see I'm about to run out of time. And judgment, we need a relook. We need a reassessment both of the 1033 and both the grant programs at Homeland Security, as well as the burn justice program. I will submit the rest of my questions for the record. And Ms. Mason, I just want to extend, if I may, just for a moment. I did a complete oversight of the grant programs 3.5 years ago at the Justice Department, and what we saw wasn't pretty. And your testimony kind of inferred that you guys are really on top of all your grants right now. Is that, would you kind of restate what you said in your opening testimony in terms of your grant management?
Thank you for the question, Senator. What I would say is that we have done a very good job of implementing the things you suggested in your assessment of our grant programs, primarily through the creation of the Office of the Audit Assessment and Management, where we do a lot of internal self-assessment and looking at our programs. We've implemented risk assessment tools to determine which of our grants should get more in-depth monitoring. So we've also implemented that every single one of our grants gets a desk review every year. So we believe that we are doing a much, much better job in overseeing our grant programs.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Matt.
I want to clear up, and make sure that the record is clear in response.
I just want to introduce to the record an article in the, from October 16, 2013, the Boston Globe, which sets the record straight. Sarnev was found because a guy went out to check his boat because he saw the end of it up. Didn't have anything to do with money that we'd spent. Didn't have anything to do with anything other than he noticed it, and he was surprised by the fact that he found this guy in fetal position in his boat and called 911. So this needs to be in the record to set the record straight about what that is. I have one question for the three of you, and then we'll go to the next panel. What have you heard directly from the administration in terms of review at your level about the review that the administration announced based on what happened in Ferguson? What information have you received at the Justice Department, at Homeland Security, in FEMA, and at the Defense Department? What have you heard directly from the White House?
We have already had meetings about the review, and we've already been supplying information. So the review is an active process at this time.
As far as the Justice Department's concerned?
It's all of us are involved.
Well, let me get them to answer specifically. What have you heard, Brian?
Senator Coburn, I participated in the first meeting of the review panel. It is a comprehensive review of the programs, their operation, the very same kinds of questions we've talked about here, training, our oversight, auditing, noncompliance. Senator, I look forward to reading that article. Information that was provided to me by the Massachusetts Homeland Security Agency and the state police indicate that the infrared and the infrared camera was instrumental in locating him. So I look forward to reading that article.
Here's the direct quote from the guy that called 911 to tell him there's somebody in my boat. He's been injured. I think he's Sarnev.
Understand, Senator. I look forward to reading it.
My direct staff at the Assistant Secretary level is participating in the review. Like my fellow colleagues, has been over at the White House. We've been providing information to the White House and are fully engaged. And the only reason I wasn't over there is because I was out of town at the time.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Great to hear. That's called appropriate response. Thank you. Dr. Kraska, appreciate you coming and appreciate you working with us. Tell me what the difference is between a militarized and increasingly federalized police force and a standing army.
It's actually a bit of a complicated history that I won't get into too much, but we have to remember that the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 had been in place untouched for quite a long time until the 1980s drug war. And it wasn't until the 1980s drug war, it was actually the Reagan administration that wanted to completely repeal Posse Comitatus, but what instead happened is they just amended it significantly to allow for cross-training and weapons transference. And just as an aside, I don't want to make too much of an aside, but we also have to remember that the Department of Defense has been very actively involved in training local police departments as well, not just providing them equipment, but providing them training. I've got a great quote that I'm not going to read it now, but if you ask me to read it, I will, that talks about even having Navy SEALs and Army Rangers come to a local police department and teach them things. So it's not just weapons transference. The federal government has increasingly, since 9/11, played a significant role in accelerating these trends towards militarization. And, you know, the extent to which the 1033 program, the Department of Homeland Security funds, et cetera, have contributed to it, I would certainly call it significant. But I think we have to remember that the militarized culture of a component of policing, and it's just a component of policing. This isn't a unified phenomenon in all of police in the United States of America. Hell, we have a police department right next to us, the Lexington PD, very smart, very wise. They don't do this kind of thing at all, and they would never do it. So the policing community is a bit split over this. And I don't want anybody to get the impression, because of the experts we've heard, that policing is all for this stuff, because it's just not true. There are lots of folks that aren't. Anyway, back to federalization. So I think the federal government has played a significant role in probably the last 10 to 14 years.
All right. The rest of my questions I'll submit for the record so we can move on in our time.
Okay. Senator Johnson?